Hello, and welcome back to Rejuvenated Women, Impeccable Health for High-Performing Women. I am your host, Dr. Alex Swenson-Ridley, and I'm really excited to be joined today by LaurieAnne Campbell, who is perhaps the only person who is a bulimia recovery coach using graphotherapy, which is handwriting analysis, and angles of self-branding in her process. LaurieAnne has traveled and lived in many places. She was born in Montreal, Quebec, and her family moved to Istanbul, Turkey when she was 7, where they lived for 4 years, during which they were the first civilian family to walk from Asia to Europe in the first Bosphorus Bridge. LaurieAnne has always wanted to have her own business from the age of 7. She's transitioned from marketing, branding, and finance to the automotive industry, and after her divorce at 30 has moved into doing more of her own business. And she is a bulimia has been through bulimia for 30 years, recovered from it, and is here to just kind of share her story. So LaurieAnne, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Alex. I'm really pleased to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. And here, you obviously have done a lot of interesting things in your life and lived a very interesting life. But I'd love to hear just a little bit more about, how you got to where you are, including like handwriting analysis, because that's really cool. So,
Well, my handwriting analysis, just to go there first, is I was reading books my mother had when I was 9 years old, and always fascinated by it. And when I got married and had 3 children, of course, the cost of daycare was, may as well have had a nanny come in, so we decided to do that. And it was interesting that the way that I hired my nanny was through handwriting analysis. So just a quick example, we have the pictures and we have the letters. You look at the pictures, and there was one definitely you would probably not choose. The other two just sweet looking as anything. Then put those aside. I took the handwriting, and the one that I picked was the picture that I probably would never have picked, and she was the best nanny we ever had. She even stayed an extra year with us because she was from Quebec coming over with us. And where it changed is, from realizing the different temperaments, the different traits in a person, and what did I want for my children. I wanted somebody who was honest, somebody who was exuberant, someone who lived for the day, and that's what this person had in her handwriting. So years later, I'm running my own automotive industry company, and I'm on the computer, and I see this handwriting university, and I'm like, no joke, really? So I started that, and got certified in 2012, and I just got my master's this year. COVID was lovely for me in a sense because it gave me the time to catch up to complete that. So that's where I'm at. And the neat thing about the master's is not all of it is proven, but it takes you to a different level where you can actually start to see some of the medical issues that people might have in their handwriting, such as Parkinson's or Alzheimer's and such.
oh, that's really interesting. That's cool.
Yeah.
And so, how does this tie in with bulimia recovery? Because I know that's, largely what I reached out to you about was having you come on the show and just, talk about your story around that. So, where does handwriting analysis come into play with us?
Okay, so one thing that I was really pleased about, which I didn't realize, so I struggled with bulimia for 30 years. At the age of 48, which was 10 years ago, I finally conquered it. And it was on and off, but mostly on. I will say absolutely when I had my children while I was pregnant, it wasn't an issue of not being bulimic, which was interesting. It was maybe something that feeling the love inside of me, I don't know. But the struggles, being bulimic starts, I always say it was like a diet gone wrong, but it goes beyond that. So once I got through my bulimia, I'd always wanted to, even when I was, through periods of recovery. Previously, I said, when I fully recover and I'm comfortable with that, I want to give forth to people who are struggling with it. What was nice about the handwriting is it included the graphotherapy, which also helped me in my recovery, because what you can do is it signals certain pointers in your traits that you can actually change by changing your handwriting. And one of the big things about bulimics is they have low self-esteem. And so it's not as simple because it's traits that you pull together, but one of the first steps would be seeing that my T-bar was low, was to elevate it. And that will elevate the self-esteem. And it is proven that this works, and I have done it, and it really did change my mindset. So
That's really
there,
cool.
and little things too, such as the other two that I'll give, because I don't want to get too elongated in it, but
Yeah.
if you have a D stem that's open, like circular, or a T stem that's circular, that means that you are um, sensitive to criticism. And I did notice that both of those were open, and it didn't matter. I have, I'm not I'm not tooting my own horn, but I can't tell you how many courses I've taken in my life and how many certificates I have on the wall, and yet my T-bar was still open in fear of criticism of intellect.
Interesting.
So closing that up and increasing the height, or lifting the height of my T-bar, closing the D as well, because that is, the D one reflects fear of criticism of your how you look. So
Okay.
so there's a lot more to it, but those
Yeah.
were three that were specific to, I knew that. And even to this day, sometimes I'll write and I'll see my little T-bar start to open up, and it's funny because I'll think, you know what, it's true. I'm starting to feel a little bit like, fear of criticism, that, oh, you really don't know what you're talking about, type of thing, and you got to pull out of it. I say, no, I
Yeah.
do though.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
and it's
No,
all subconscious.
that's really cool. And I've never studied handwriting. I mean, I joke I have like doctor's handwriting. I mean, it's atrocious. My son's handwriting is clearer than mine. Like I can't read anything I write. I've read notes while I'm live on things, and I'm like, I have no idea what I wrote there. But it's just really interesting to see that as a tool to change mindset and to like tap into that, because it's totally possible to change how we view ourselves in the world. But that's super interesting. Um,
And it's based on the neural pathways too. So a lot of what you're writing is subconscious. It's like when you get in a car after you've driven for so long, you don't even think about it. You see red light, you stop. I mean, it's just automatic. And the same thing
mhm.
with the writing. And by the way, Dr. Alex, it doesn't really matter. Even if somebody has really bad handwriting, we can still do a handwriting analysis, because to us, strangely, we don't look at how pretty or ugly the writing is. We don't even
Mhm.
look at the content when we're doing it. Sometimes I'll read the content after I've done an analysis and go, oh, that's really cute what they wrote. But in that particular moment when I'm doing the analysis, that's not my purpose. My purpose is to pull out, issues, even with in bulimia. I mean, along with the self-esteem, there could be also the issues of, uh, feeling some frustrations with the opposite sex. You can see that
Mhm.
trigger it in what they call the sort of like a claw. So, and then the tics for anger and the irritation, and it's to try and calm people down. You could work with those, but yeah, it doesn't matter how bad the handwriting. My son hated me when I said write, and I want you to write in cursive, which is even worse. Like, you may as well like
Right.
tell him to go to his room. No, that's even better because all the toys are in there. But but he did do that, and he says I hate my handwriting, but it
Mhm.
it does pull out the traits regardless, so it doesn't matter.
That's
Yeah.
really interesting. Now I'm super curious about this, but we can we can bring our shift into more of this conversation around bulimia, because we were talking, and you probably have more of the statistics than I do, but I know a lot of women struggle with eating issues, and it can be societally driven. It can be around body image, it can be around a lot of things. So as much as you're comfortable like sharing your story, and kind of what, maybe we should start with, what is bulimia? Like, how do I know if that's something I'm struggling with? What are the first steps in kind of recognizing you have a problem, and going from there?
Okay, so bulimia basically is when you binge and purge, so you overeat. Quite often, it does start, and not always though, but quite often it's trying to, you know, if you're overweight and you're trying to lose weight and you go on a diet, and the problem is that the diet, and this is what ultimately happened with me. I was 16, 130 pounds at 5'7" and a half, so totally perfectly fine. But I was told by someone in the family that I was overweight and wanted me to lose weight before her wedding, so put me on a starvation diet. Never before that did I even know what a diet was. I never even considered it. Well, as a little kid, I was bugged and said that I was fat, but that was only because I was really tall. So when I stepped on a scale, obviously I was heavier than anyone else. But again, I didn't equate that to food. I just felt that I was a big person. I was always quite taller than people too. Anyway, so long of the short of it is, all of a sudden the dieting goes. I go on the starvation diet. All my eating habits just went out the door. And the more you diet, the more you gain because of the restrictions. The more you want that. So all of a sudden, I go from 130 pounds to 160 pounds, and then I'm trying to lose which is ridiculous. And then you've got a friend who says, hey, you can have your cake and eat it too, tells you about it, and you attempt it, and once you succeed, at first it is, wow, I've lost weight, it's great. However, what happens from there, it becomes what would be summed up as an addiction, really, where your emotions get eaten up, so food becomes a comfort. And what you feel is that as a bulimic, you can probably, I think, me personally anyway, I don't know if other bulimics, I'm not bulimic anymore, but as a bulimic, would be able to say we could relate more to overeaters than we could to anorexics. The only difference with us is that we hid our overeating. Couldn't see it because we purged it. But the purging almost becomes a ritual as well. So I'll just throw something in. You get angry at somebody. You eat your anger. And there's that comfort in just like crunchy stuff usually, right? And then you'll purge it. And in a way, it's almost like you're purging that person that you're angry at. So I always say that it's almost self-sabotaging because you're hurting yourself versus the person that you're angry at. And that's one of the things. I mean, there's the boredom aspect as well, where you get so crazy bored and you want to make time pass, which is nuts, but you do. And you'll turn to food because it's an easy way to do it instead of, focusing on mindset and going, no, that's not what I really want to do. But you do it. And women, the thing is, it's difficult to overcome in the best of times. But when you start moving into your 30s and you have your kids and the overwhelm, because now you've got, you've got your bills, you've got your kids, you've got all of that other stuff that you're worried about. The more overwhelm that you have, the harder it is to find recovery, because you're finding your comfort in your food to relax you from all that. So that's why you tend to find that women, and there's some men as well, that will carry that their bulimia right into their 40s, 50s, 60s, and it still exists out there, and it's a lot more common than people know. I don't know, because stats change everywhere. Like I read all the time, and it's like 50%, 30%, 20%, 5%. But the one that I thought was probably the most doable is like 0.3% of women are over 40. Suffer, struggled. So, I mean, it's not a huge number, but it's big enough that it's something that should be looked at. And they're hard to reach because they're more ashamed of being a bulimic. I mean, you almost I've mentioned this before, that Hollywood almost glorified being a bulimic. Oh, what you doing? I'm just going to the bathroom to throw up my food. And it almost became like it was okay, which it's not. But you don't see, 40, 50, 60-year-olds in a movie where that's the same thing. It just doesn't go. It's like, they think we look crazy when we're dancing even. So, it's
Right.
different mindset. Yeah. So.
And there's so much there to unpack, and not that I want to say I love, but I can see how, a lot of it's emotionally driven, right? And when we don't have good tools and muscles to help us deal with our emotions, it can, certainly be an addiction and something that you really fall into, and kind of creating that really unhealthy patterning with food, emotion, and like, here's how I deal with this. Yeah. So for those listening that, maybe they recognize that this is something they've struggled with, or they have family members that they wonder about, or like, for you, where was the tipping point? Like, when did you finally recognize, like, this is an issue and I need to do something differently?
Well, I knew it was an issue from the time that I really started, and I was going getting help on and off. I think when it just stopped was, I had a sister who was very honest with me. She says, I can hear you, and I know it's happening, and I love you, and I'm worried, and I don't want you to hurt yourself anymore. And I thought, wow, it can be a very selfish thing to keep going when, you think about all the other people that you can hurt. And obviously, bulimia becomes a lot more of a health risk. It always is a health risk, but it increases as you get older. I mean, the strain that it puts on your heart. I mean, purging is not, it's very, it affects the heart quite a bit. I mean, you're going to be, and that is the number one concern when it comes to bulimia in midlife. So I thought, okay, well, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of hurting people. It's time for me to get. And I really, at this point, thought, I'm doing this to myself. I'm making the excuses. There's nobody around me. I was divorced. I was on my own. No one was holding me back from getting better anymore in the sense of the way I was reflecting. So when I was married, I felt sometimes that overpower. Well, I wasn't anymore. I didn't have that excuse for one, which is an excuse because it's my own personal fault as the way that I was dealing with it. But you have to be kind to yourself. So as much as I say it's a fault, it's also something that, and what was making things trigger, I realized, I have no reason not to stop. Nobody ever has a reason not to stop. But this time it was just apparent that it was like, what are you doing? And so I moved forward in saying that was it. No excuses, I guess, was what I woke up with after my sister said that. I have no excuses. So I wanted to live a better life. I wanted to have dinner with my family without worrying about where I was going to find the next bathroom and how I was going to hide. I got tired of hiding.
Yeah. That's really powerful.
And the other thing, too, is when you first come out of it, you have to realize that you hit a lot of emotions in your binging and purging, and those are going to still be there. So you're going to have to learn to deal with them. And I think that was a good 3 months of really eye-opening, learning to deal with the emotions and not turning to something that comforted them. And as one of these lovely ladies said in an interview, she says, it's becoming comfortable with your discomfort. I love that line.
I love that one too. And it's so true, learning just to sit in our emotions and be okay with them. It's scary, it's hard. It's, I came out of a marriage where my husband was an alcoholic, so, struggling with addiction and just a lot of self-hatred and hiding, and that brought up lots of emotions for me that I didn't know how to deal with. And it's about learning how to do it in a healthy way, which is sometimes just being with them and acknowledging they're there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. We were mentioning that too because I remember the first time that I cried, what I called a sober cry, without, because I did like my glass of wine every now and again when I recovered from the bulimia. And then I thought that's just another numbing agent and you can't do that. So putting all aside and then having that cry, and I thought, wow, this is freeing, painful but freeing to have that sober cry. And that was a turning point as well. And I thought, wow, I'd rather feel this. And
wow.
Because I had a blog that I called it Bulimia, and it says it hurts not to hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah,
it's not
on multiple levels. Because when you, I guess, use other, coping mechanisms to just bury your emotions, you're not really dealing with them. And
okay.
so, yeah.
So. And the divorce was a tough one too. I went through a pretty tough one as well. And, after that it was sort of, I was lost. But I will say the bulimia never stopped me from doing things. I still did things.
It sounds like it. You've done a lot. Yeah.
I keep thinking, without that time and the money and everything that was wasted on that, how much more I could have done. And I'm not bashing myself, but sometimes I think back going, wow, and I don't know how many friends or family that I might have alienated because of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's to look at today and we're moving forward and the people around me and the people I can help to get out of there, because I know a lot of people just feel like it's a really dark place to be.
Yeah.
And it can be, definitely.
Yeah. And so as you were going through your own recovery, I know you do a lot of work now to just help support women going, who are on the recovery road, but what are the resources and places that women can tap into to find support?
First of all, I believe if you're not going to, well, obviously therapists really are helpful, or coaches are very helpful to reach out and guide you through it. That's been, that's a big help. Some people want to do it alone. If you're going to do that, you better have a family member or somebody that you can confide in and who will be okay. Like I remember, in my recovery stage, and I think I was 3 months into it, I called my sister up and I said, I want to binge and purge. And she said, that's okay. And I said, no, it's not. But her telling me it was okay made me not want to do it. But the point is that she was telling me she was there no matter what. Whether I relapsed for a day or didn't, or whether I was going not wasn't going to be like, oh no, don't do it, don't do it. It would be like, I prefer you not to, but it's okay. I'm still here for you, even if you do. And I think that's really important. Because one thing that a bulimic can do is maybe go like a week without and then have a binge purge session, then feel so bad. It's almost like, the diet. Oh, I messed it up. So what the heck? I give up.
Right.
And it's not to give up. It's definitely, you can't give up. That would be the one thing. Reading really helps. There's a couple of books out there that are really good. I will say the Joan Borisenko, and I'll not know if I get it right. I'm going to just read it quickly because it's right here. I got it
Okay.
mixed up. So it's Minding the Body, Mending the Mind was one of the books that I read too that was really key, because I seriously believe that the first place to start, which people think it's the mindset, I think it's also the way you're eating, because your mindset will be affected by the lack of nutrients, and
Yeah.
it will cause things. It caused me mood swings when I was bulimic,
Mhm.
oversensitivity, overtiredness, uh, all things that when you're eating well, it gives you a better focus on towards your recovery. So, and I personally also wrote a book called How to Have Your Cake and Not Eat It All Too, and that also
Awesome.
speaks to adult recovery.
It's very cool. And those are all great tips and resources, and I think it's a huge key is to just have someone in your corner, and
Absolutely.
yeah, somebody who can be there without judgment and be there just to support you. So I love that you. It sounds like you have a great sister.
Oh yes. No, she really has been throughout my life. She's been very supportive, but that was key. I think my family, and it's weird though that it took till I was 48 to hear those words. Um,
Hmm.
I don't think there was enough out there, particularly when I started, for any family to know how to deal with it. It really would be like, parents would get angry at their children. What are you doing? Do you want attention? Eat now, stop this, or stop overeating, or you're wasting my food, versus all that's going to do is make the bulimic hide. They're
Right.
going to do it
Yeah.
anyway, and it's going
Yeah.
to drive them deeper into that darkness. So, being understanding, it is, I understand for family members who do have someone in their family that has bulimia or any kind of eating disorder, it's frustrating and it's scary, just like having children who are on drugs.
Yeah.
It's the same type of thing. You fear for them, you worry for them. Um, but with bulimia, anorexics, quite often they'll have to be hospitalized if it gets to a certain
Hmm.
point, whereas bulimics, it's not as common to be hospitalized if they're you know kind of like the not on the because there's some anorexic bulimics, so bulimirexics, that would be
Yeah.
also somewhere where they go, but most bulimics will not, but they do need the support, they need the help to get
Hmm.
through there. But like I said, it does take patience and loving and understanding. Um,
Yeah.
and even if you need to take their hand and say, here, let's together find a therapist or a coach, somebody you like, and you might have to go shopping, because trust me,
Hmm.
I've been to psychiatrists and some therapists, and I walked out going, this isn't working for me. So it's got to
Yeah.
be the right person. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Absolutely. And, not to feel guilty about shopping around. Like, you got to find the person that you connect with. I know a lot of people are like, well, I tried therapy, but I didn't like, I'm like, well, did you try another option? Like, it's okay to go to more than one and find the person you jive with. So
Oh, it's
that's
important
important.
too as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, you don't like going in and thinking, and you go for one therapy and they go, well, we'll see you next week, and you feel too bad to say no. And that's the other problem, right? Bulimics quite
Mhm.
often are people pleasers, and they have a hard time saying no. So they're gonna keep seeing that person. 10
Right.
sessions later, you're realizing nothing really ever worked out because you didn't have that connection. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, kind of in wrapping this up, what's life like on the other side? Like, when did you finally reach the point where you felt stable and like were recovered and no longer struggling? Or are you still, is it still a daily choice?
It is seriously not a daily choice. I would not go back. It is just, I see, I'm even getting goosebumps right now thinking about it. I would say the first 6 months were the toughest.
Hmm.
And then for emotional, like dealing with emotions, not that I wanted to go to food, but it's feeling lost, dealing with the emotions that you used to go
Yeah.
to food for. That would have been another, 3 years. As far as going back, it's kind of interesting that it, the it becomes so much easier, and when you look at the being so grateful for when you are recovered, the mindset's better, and like I said, being able to sit down with your family and have a meal and enjoy it.
Hmm.
And obviously you adjust because you know what your body is capable, like what how much you want to eat.
Right.
Me, there's no what you want to eat. I mean, when I go see my mom, whatever she makes, I eat, but it's proportions, right? And then,
Mhm.
she used to be eat everything on your plate. I look at her and go, mom, I'm not. Like, oh, I
Yeah.
stop, okay? And you got to take that stance too, is not to feel guilty about leaving things on your plate. It's okay. If you're full,
Mhm.
then stop, pack it up, take it home, and you can have it, tomorrow or whatever. It's just
Right.
so freeing. I can't even begin to tell you. I love that I can even cook and I can have stuff in my house and I'm not afraid of food anymore. And what I say is that food used to almost be like my best friend and my worst enemy.
Hmm.
And then what I did is I decided, okay, you're not my best friend, but I'll make friends with you and I really like you. But it's not my end all and be all. So I just I enjoy cooking, I enjoy doing that stuff now, and it doesn't scare me. And I think that is amazing, and being able to deal with my emotions on my own
Yeah.
is important. Yeah.
Yeah. No, those are all, I think, even, people who aren't struggling with necessarily something as extreme as bulimia or anorexia, like we were talking about this in my on our group call in my program last night, and like just how much our society is driven, eating our emotions. And any kind of celebration, it's like it's always around food, it's always around something sugary, it's always around, you know funeral, same thing, like you're stressed out,
Mm.
it's always food. And so, it's really powerful, I think, for anybody to listen to this and know that you don't have to do that. Like, you do not have to turn to food.
No, and I think once you're comfortable with yourself, you won't look at it and with no restrictions, you don't sit there and go, "Oh my goodness, I really want that, but I can't have it." Like I look at something, if I want it, I'll have it. And even if it's just a bite of something that I look at that I want, if I really want it, get over the craving or the urge and just
Hmm.
do it. Again, it's the amount, it's not being fearful. That
Hmm.
bite or that little thing that you want that you're telling yourself you can't is not going to put 20 pounds on you tomorrow.
Right.
And you get to enjoy it and eat slowly.
Yeah.
Savor it.
Yeah.
So
Savor the moment. Exactly. Very cool. Well, where can people go to connect with you or find out more about you?
well, they can go to my main site, that's the sort of umbrella to everything, is iamthatgal.com.
Awesome.
And there are links to pretty well everything. And then I do have, if anybody is looking for a support, that I have particularly for midlife bulimia, because that's
Hmm.
my focus right now. If they go search out midlife bulimia recovery, or it's at groups /bulimiatic, but the way it's spelled might be, so looking it up is probably easier.
Okay.
So
And I can
midlife,
put all that in the show notes as well. And
excellent.
send you a link.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well,
Really
thank
appreciate having me here, Dr. Alex. Really do.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. This has been really great. And I appreciate you coming on. So,
Very welcome. Take care.
alrighty.